Hello, hello. I am so excited, so excited. It is Monday. Woohoo! Yay for Monday. Can you tell I'm excited for Monday? Monday, 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 Monday. Okay, here we go. Here. Monday. It's Monday. Hey!
Hey.
Hi!
Hello.
Hello!
Um,
We're waiting for one more. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is like the most fabulous way to start off the week. I'm just saying.
for it. It's good to be on a Monday.
Right? Yeah, like a
Yeah,
little community and togetherness. Like,
absolutely.
I'm rocking it. All right, let's see. Okay. Just waiting for Reba, and then we'll get started. How's the West Coast weather?
The West Coast weather today, it's the sun's out, but it's a little chilly. It's about probably the low 70s. That's chilly for us. Um,
I'm like,
but
that's a heat wave.
yeah, it was actually supposed to rain today, but it didn't. So that's nice that it didn't.
That's good. That's
That's
good.
always nice when you get a little more sun.
Yeah, I'll take it. Where are you?
I am just down 95 from Jesse, so I'm also in Maryland,
Oh, nice.
but in my backyard, and there's trees, and I figure it's a pretty view.
Yeah, I
Boy,
love
Hi
it.
guys.
Hi,
I
Rima.
love it. Hey,
Hey. I don't know why my sound. I can hardly hear you guys.
Hmm.
we hear
Any
you.
tips?
Yeah.
I hear you
Can you hear
great.
me?
Yeah.
I guess I'll just have to get closer to the phone.
Let's get intimate here. I am so excited because we have multiple states and we have two countries on, and this is like so incredible. And it's everything that I love is bringing people together from so many different backgrounds to talk about all the amazing things. But tonight I am so excited because so all month long I've had a lot of events planned with incredible people, and here we are. We've made it to the end of April. I'm kind of sad because I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's been really nice to see like all the camaraderie. And then I have to remind myself, well, we have camaraderie all year round. And I think that a lot of the conversations that have been taking place this month and last week are really a big push to continue to have an inclusive community when we're talking about fertility, the struggles, loss, the griefs, the joys, the highs and the lows, like of all of those things. And I think that last week really solidified that for a lot of people, in that there are so many differences, and we have to remind ourselves to invite all the differences in, and that they don't all have to be what you see right here. And I think that that's really important. And so that's kind of what brings me to tonight. I'm so excited. In case you haven't watched any of the previous ones, I get really giddy because I'm like fangirling because like I admire everybody that I've had on. And Julie, we had on a couple weeks ago for sex and infertility, like intimacy. And that was like such a great conversation. And I'm so glad to have her back, and Rima up in Toronto, and Crystal over on the West Coast. Like, this is so awesome. So, I'm not going to do your intros. You guys can like do that like yourself. But what I was thinking is to start off, if you just mention your fertility, like a quick like synopsis of like where you are and like what your thing is so that people understand your fertility journey. And then we'll dive into the topic of tonight, which is the rituals that help us through our faith. So I don't like to pick people to go. That's like a pet peeve of mine. I'm like, I can't decide. So whoever wants to go first, that's fine with me. Okay, don't everybody go. Crystal, yeah, you're amazing.
I'll go. So, hi everyone. My name is Crystal Chavez. I'm out in Los Angeles, California, bright and sunny state over here. My husband and I have been trying to conceive for the last 4 years. Quick diagnoses. I've been diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is PCOS. In addition to that, I also had a hydrosalpinx, which is my right fallopian tube being blocked and filled with fluid, which was surgically removed last year. We've had a total of 3 failed IUI cycles. That was kind of heavy for me. That was like the first time we dabbled into anything as far as seeking or rendering services for ourselves. And today marks the first day of our IVF journey. So the birth control's winning right now. I'm like sweating and like I'm just trying to kick this headache, but that's kind of where we're at. So I'm excited for what's to come. I'm trying to remain as optimistically hopeful as I can, but that's a little bit about me and my background.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to have you here tonight.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, Rima, I'm going to throw it to you up in Canada.
Okay. Yeah, so my name's Rima, and I am 36 years old. Actually, 36 and a half as of yesterday. It's not something that I'm happy to announce or proud to announce, because in our world, our infertility world, that just solidifies a lot of our fears, right? But what can you do? So you said I was from Toronto. I'm close to Toronto, just 2 hours west of Toronto. So I'm in London, Ontario. 2 hours away from Michigan as well. So just kind of in the middle between Toronto and the States. And I've been married for almost 3 years now to the love of my life, my first and only love. And we have been trying since our honeymoon. Right away, we plan to have children. Unfortunately, I have not fallen pregnant, not once, in almost 3 years. We did diagnostic testing shortly after, probably around the 6-month mark of our marriage. Something just felt off to me. I always had this irrational fear, and really I didn't have anything to substantiate it, but I had this irrational fear that something, once it came time for me to try and have children, even when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I had this thought like, oh, what if I, you never know, what if I can't? So anyhow, I went and I was diagnosed on unexplained infertility for the first 2.5 years. We tried a couple of IUIs, didn't work out. IVF, we were supposed to start that last March, but then the pandemic shut everything down, unfortunately. So we had to wait until August. And then I also have low AMH. I have Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. I knew we weren't going to yield very many eggs. I was not happy when we only yielded 2 this past summer, but they were grade A embryos on day 3. We transferred 1. It did not implant, and then our second embryo arrested on day 5. So I don't have any on ice. And after that unsuccessful attempt, my doctor highly recommended that I do a laparoscopy to see if I have endometriosis. I had to wait about 6 months for that, but finally in mid-January of this year, he went in and I do have stage 3 endometriosis. So protocols are changing now. We were told to try naturally for a few months. That few months is up as of this weekend. Unfortunately, I did start my cycle, so not having any success naturally still. So we're just in discussions now about establishing a plan for round 2. So that's where I am.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad you're here. And there's some Michigan people watching, so they were excited that you gave them a shot.
Hi, everyone. So I come to this in a couple of different ways. First of all, I am a reproductive psychologist, is what I do. So I live, breathe, all sorts of reproductive traumas and issues, including, of course, infertility. And I came to this work, as I like to say, really honestly, in trying to create our own family. We had secondary infertility in the form of recurrent pregnancy losses, and learned through that we have a unknown gene that basically causes the brain to not form. So we had a couple of pregnancies where we did not learn that until the second trimester, and then had to reach a decision point then. So I am done having children, and that is a nice thing just to be able to say, okay, my we've created our family, and that is what we needed to do. So I have decided, from my own experiences, that this was a world I really needed to train in and to be in. And so that is what I've done. And so for the last decade, that is what I've been doing, and certainly will continue to support people through their reproductive journeys, whatever they might look like.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you're here as well, Julie. Thank you so much. So now that we got the bios out of the way, now we can roll up the sleeves and get into the conversation. So oftentimes with my clients and even with friends, I hear the biggest thing, especially for people who feel very connected with their religion and their upbringing and just where they're at, they struggle with the connection of believing and trusting in the same time within their faith. And it was interesting because a couple weeks ago I spoke with, well, her Instagram handle is Ali and the Enterprise, Alicia Anderson, and she wrote a book. And in her book, she was very connected to her faith because her father was a minister, and so that was like a lot of what she was constantly hearing. And it was just an interesting tie-in. And so oftentimes I'm having conversation with people like, I want to believe, I want to trust that it's going to work out and that God has a plan and that like all these things, but then they struggle with doing the simple acts of like the traditional religious acts that we would do, go to a prayer service or light candles or just be with community. I mean, here we are, we're in the middle of Ramadan, and that's a very community invested month-long event for you. And so let's talk about what is it like, the connection. Like, I had this all planned out in my head, and clearly it's not coming out of my mouth the way that it sounded. So my apologies. but let's have a conversation instead of it just being like, okay, me ask a question, but what's it like for you? All three of you are connected to your faith so much and lean into it for support within your community and just the text and your, the people. How does that work for you? And do you struggle with that?
We actually switched churches because our last church, so I'm Christian, and our last church had really big reservations about reproductive health and wellness and that embodiment of trying to conceive, it being not so natural. So I found that in the community that both my husband and I belonged to for many years, even prior to us getting married, there were a lot of people who frowned upon it, like upon the whole, IVF and like all of that. So it made us feel really bad, right? So we grew up believing that, the church is what it is. It's very sacred. It's very, and I still believe in all these things. Like I still believe in Christ and Jesus and all of that. But there's a time where we had to kind of remind ourselves of the word in the Bible versus the word of others. And it weighed really heavy between my husband and I, just because, when you're in of people that became family and they're telling you, what we're doing is a sin and we need to stop playing God, that really kind of puts a damper on our future plans, right? And so my question to even our pastor was, well, what can I do as a woman, right, on earth to conceive? Because we've tried, and I'm 35 now. I'm going to be 36 this year, and I'm just like, if there are doctors in place to save lives, why not get the assistance needed to aid us with starting a family? Because, naturally. We've done it for years and nothing came out of that. So after much back and forth discussion between the church and ourselves and in our community, we actually opted out. This year took us a little bit, but we opted out. But in the midst of it, and this is things that I don't share publicly, just because it's, it was really heartbreaking. Like, I went through all of these failed cycles last year, and instead of the support from the community that we belong to, as far as the congregation, the church, it was just kind of like, well, yeah, because that's not God's work. And then, so this year, leading up into IVF, I wanted to make sure that my mental health was like in a really solid place. So we found another church just kind of down the road from us. And they are a little bit more open-minded. It's also a Christian church, but the support and the love that we've received from that, from the pastor, as well as like the community there, is so different. And I think that that's the thing with Christianity, is that it's just like with any relationship, right? Like, you got to find what matter or what makes sense to you and your season of whatever it looks like. For us, it was infertility. And I mean, I feel good. I think it's just learning to kind of grow within this community and like expand my faith in this community as well. But the one thing that doesn't change is like the word of God, right? Like, I think that it differs for everybody, but for us, I think it was imperative to find the support, the right support in all aspects of life, friendship, family, as well as community of faith. And that's what we did. And we upped and left our old church that we belonged to for about 8 years, and we're at a new church now, but I don't regret it. I mean, it's probably the best decision I've made, just mentally and emotionally for my husband and I. So
That's beautiful. And I think that that's something that we hear a lot of, like just in different religions, like people not feeling that support. And then where do they go, especially if it's a connection of a community that they've been invested in for so long. It's a separation that hurts, and you're grieving through having that support when you thought that you were anticipating to have it in the beginning. Yeah, that's wow. But I love that, like, you found it, and you didn't have to drive an hour to go there either. So that's
yeah, it was awesome. So,
oh, awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Sorry, I make funny faces when I'm like, I don't know what I should be doing.
So I guess I'll dive in now. In terms of just how faith helps ground me throughout all of our infertility struggles, as you can tell, I am a Muslim, and I began wearing hijab when I was around 12 or 13. So faith has always been a part of my life, and I feel that it helps it ground me, and it keeps me kind of keeps my eyes on the prize, sort of thing, right? And also, if things aren't going the way that I necessarily would hope they would go in any facet of my life, it's just a reminder that, okay, there is, like, we believe that there's a bigger plan, and that God basically determines our destiny, and everything that he does for us is in our best interest, and he doesn't necessarily give us more than what we can handle. Right. So I was actually having a conversation with my mom the other day, the day that I started my cycle, and it was very emotional. And, she's trying to keep strong, and I'm trying to keep strong, but it's, as we know, it's not an easy journey. And she just kept on repeating to me, Rima, like, God doesn't give you, so God, Allah in Arabic, doesn't give you more than you can handle. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but, sometimes it's hard. I trust the plan, I trust him, but sometimes it's just hard to, in a sense, let go of that control, or let go of that dream, or just to kind of put yourself 100% in his embrace. I don't know what the appropriate term is here, but and my husband, he often reminds me as well. I mean, so Muslims pray 5 times a day. I'm not always the best with my prayers, I'm going to be honest, but when I do pray, at the end of each prayer, you know, there's a time for us to give something called da'at, which is you're asking God for anything and everything, right? So I often ask for, you know, good health for my family and my friends. And you know, if I know that anyone that's struggling, or, you know, my infertility sisters, I'll name them each individually. And I'll be like, please help, you know, this person and help this person with their journey. And so that's called that. So at the end of that, you say Amin, and, you know, you hope for the best. So I was talking to my husband the other day, and after I'd started my cycle, and he's like, okay, Dima, let's put things into perspective, right? And I'm like, okay, lay it on me. Although at times, like, as much as you are devout and you're faithful and you believe, there's sometimes where you just want to sulk and cry and be angry and be mad and be hurt and feel sorry for yourself. So he helped ground me in a sense and said, you know, in the Islamic belief system, you know, when you're making a prayer, you're doing the da'at, God has 3 answers in a sense, right? So the first answer is, yes, I will give you what you're asking for. The second is, yes, but not right now, right? And then the third is, no, I have something better in store for you, right? So as hard as that is for me to hear when I'm in so much pain, you know, my period pains from my endometriosis, I'm crying, it just feels like my back is like just splitting in two, and just lots of pain on top of another month that's just gone by. That gives me comfort, right? To know that I will not be forsaken. And if I have plans for myself, I don't know. In a sense, I want to believe I know what's best for me, but I don't know what's best for me, right? Or best for the two of us. So that just kind of helps ground me at times too. And that's just kind of how my faith keeps me above water during my darkest of times in this journey.
Like the rope that keeps pulling you and just kind of like supporting you, and with your community, a hand at your back, just like supporting you, continuing to do that. Yeah. We love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's a lot of resonance, I think, that overlaps clearly with different faiths. But I think that especially during this time, and you know, it's as many community holidays and whatnot, you know, we always think that next time, like, things will be different, right? And so, and then here we are, and then you start your cycle. Like, that's just, it's raw and it's real. But I think there's so much truth to be said that, like, the acknowledgement, like, you can be devout in your faith, but you can also feel the emotions, where sometimes we feel like we're not allowed to feel, and that it's only up to them. And then we're supposed to be just like in this box and just 100% trust and not feel like we should just be grateful, right? And then I think if people are watching this and they're struggling, I think that it will give them some solidarity to know that, like, they shouldn't feel guilty for having emotions and still being faithful to their practice.
Absolutely.
I think that that's really like a big thing that is probably on a lot of people's minds, no matter what background they have. So thank you. Those are definitely resonating words for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had the great privilege last year to be asked to write a chapter on the intersection of sex, infertility, and religion. And so being able to also do that deep dive in terms of a more academic sense of how each religion comes to what is permissible, because I think that's where we started this conversation, is sort of what is allowable, what is permissible, and then also how can faith be a salve during this journey too. And I am a member of the Jewish faith, and I am not devout. I am a pretty secularized Jew, but identify as a Jew. And during our reproductive journey, I had a conversation with the wife of a rabbi known as a Rebbitzin, and she was from a very Orthodox sect. So we have very different practices and beliefs and sort of how we interpret what Judaism means. But there's a fundamental part too that is similar for us. And so I'm telling her about the journey that I'm on, and I basically had said, this is it. I don't believe in God. How could a just and loving God do something that's so cruel, or put us in a position where we have to do something that's so cruel? And I said, so, I'm done. And I said, my relationship with God is done. And she says, well, let's think about that, because relationships are two-way streets. And so you might not feel very close to God right now. And she's like, that makes sense. That totally is understandable. But that doesn't mean that God hasn't kept their relationship with you. And that there is this give and take to it, and there is a push and pull to it. And just like any relationships, we can have a falling out, we can have a rift, and then it's a question of, is it worth the energy to repair? What can we do to repair? And so looking at it from that framework for me was really useful. It gave me permission to be mad at God, because who else can you be mad at? It's nobody's fault per se, but you still want to be angry, because that's just such a human thing to feel when we are so out of control in a situation. So, there's that, and there's ritual too. That was something that was really comforting to me, that my female rabbi, who's amazing, she and I constructed different rituals with each loss. And then she and I have gone on to offer pregnancy loss remembrance services. And we team up with all denominations of Jews in the Washington, D.C. area to offer these kinds of services, so that anybody can come and participate, or just know that this is something we think of. Because I think one of the difficulties when we're thinking about infertility, which in my mind also encompasses pregnancy loss, whether it's a failed embryo transfer, whether it is a failure to even create embryos, whether it is a miscarriage, a chemical pregnancy, what have you. There's so many different kinds of losses along the way. And just having that recognition, because most religion doesn't recognize infertility as a loss and a grief, and doesn't recognize pregnancy loss as a loss, because it is a prospective loss versus a retrospective loss. We're losing that dream. We're losing that hope in a future, versus losing someone who had been concrete, that a community can come with us and mourn together. So being able to start having religion and imams or rabbis or priests or ministers start talking about infertility, because God, the Bible references it all of the time. And according to the Old Testament, the cure for infertility is prayer. And that's, I think, also kind of a bitter pill to swallow too, because I imagine that it sort of flies in the face of saying, like, oh, well, you must not have been devout enough, or you must not have been prayerful enough, you must not be good enough in order to conceive, or in order to have the baby that you want. So that teaching doesn't work for me, because I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think the Bible leaves a whole lot out, has a very interesting understanding too of reproduction and how that happens, because somebody swimming in a river is not going to get somebody else pregnant, just not going to work that way. So being able, and I'm looking at that literally, of course, but being able, what can we glean from it that can be useful? And that's going to differ for all of us. And one of the things that all of us on this call right now share is we share the Old Testament as part of our faith. That Christianity and Judaism and Islam all shares the Old Testament as a part of the stories, of the faith, of the rules, of how we understand God.
So you kind of touched a little bit on creating rituals. And so I really want to spend the rest of our time kind of like talking about that, because I think prayer is a big ritual that we can all find as like a common denominator within our faith, of like whether it's you're going to a place of worship, whether you're praying at home, whether you're praying outside, at the park, wherever, in your car, that's definitely like a big significant ritual that I think we can all say that we can connect with on some level. But what else within your faith have you found as rituals? Because everybody always wants to know, well, how do you keep going? What are you doing, like, to still have faith and, to be able to keep moving forward, whatever that journey is? Because I do want to give recognition to the childless, not by choice people too, because that's still a big part of this conversation of having that faith and connection on this roller coaster ride. So just for the record, I just want to put that out there. But what rituals within your own faith have kept you supported and going? Like, what have you found comfort and maybe some joy in doing? I'll start because I want to start. But I found that over the years, when I have found that like I felt my struggle was like really intense on a lot of different levels. I mean, this is also like, this is what I do for a living. Like, I work in reproductive health for body work. And so it's everywhere. And I found that when I was really, really struggling, and even after my most recent loss in February, I found preparing for the Sabbath was something that was very, very powerful to me. There's a local rabbi who wrote a book, Rabbi Nina Cardin, who wrote a book, Seeds to Sorrow. Yeah, it's like a really beautiful book because it helps Jewish people who are experiencing infertility as well as losses, and how they can incorporate that with things that we're doing, but adding the extra connection. So for me, lighting the Shabbat candles was like, there was something so powerful in being able to light that. I'm like feeling like all watery just thinking about it, but like, it was just so, I felt like I wasn't alone. And that ritual, I felt like no matter where, no matter what time zone anybody was in, it was just the power, like I could feel every person just touching me. And so for me, over the years, I've gotten back into lighting Friday night candles. And so that was like my most beautiful ritual that I have found connected on my journey. So, yeah.
I would say some of my favorite rituals, I have a few, but I start every morning off with meditation and prayer. So I spend anywhere from 5 minutes if I have a jam-packed day and I don't have a lot of me time. Just doing, heavy breathing for a couple minutes and just diving into, some audibles, some Bible verses, just depending on my mood, how I'm feeling, if I need something uplifting or, if I need something really, really, really pick me up, like I'll dive into, different verses in the Bible, and that just helps me consume the message a little bit deeper. And then another thing that I'm huge on is worship music. So anytime I'm feeling like I'm in a slump or I'm just feeling down, I will turn up every Alexa thing in my house and just stream it through the house. And that seems to really help me kind of gather or regather and just help me feel less alone, with the lyrics. I mean, they're very powerful. So, and then obviously I do a lot of Bible studies, like with groups online, and that kind of builds community. And it's a good way of, I'm in a women's Bible study, so it's really cool to kind of just connect with everybody, because I mean, everybody I know is going through something, right? Like not just infertility related, and it helps me stay connected within the community, as far as like the Christian community. So those are a little bit of the rituals I practice.
I love that. What a beautiful way to start the day. Like, do you write down the verses that you're meditating with and like keep it like on a post-it note or something that you like see it throughout the day?
I have 2 vision boards. So one of them is all of my positive affirmations, and I'll just stare at it, practice my breathing, and I'll pick, because it's, at an eye's distance. So, and I feel like it really, and I've only gotten into meditation last year, so it's still kind of fairly new to me. It really helps me consume my entire day and whatever that looks like, whether it's work and meetings and balancing, doctor's appointments. Like, I just feel a lot more grounded. And it's just an amazing way to kind of just, push through the day, like with some positive affirmations for sure.
I love that. I love that. I get goosebumps.
Aw.
Awesome.
I guess I'll just dive in now. So thanks for sharing, ladies. Like I love, I was telling Jesse earlier, like I love interfaith dialogue and I love learning about, different cultures and different faiths and different practices and different rituals. And it's funny. I've had this conversation with Crystal already, but just her openness and willingness to share her love for her faith, and it helps actually I don't know, in a sense, like push me more into my faith as well, and to want to learn more about my faith and practice more. So it's beautiful, although we have different belief systems. I mean, at the base, I feel that we all have the same human need for connection and for ultimate trust and or what have you. And it is interesting, just like speaking about our faith, like the three monotheistic faiths, a lot of people don't realize that we actually do have a lot of the same core beliefs. And that, Jesus has different rules in each of our faiths, but he has a rule and an important rule. And that we believe in Adam, and we believe in Eve, and we believe in Jonah and Noah, and the Virgin Mary. We have all the same core beliefs. So it's interesting to analyze, not to analyze, but to just hear about the different rituals that accompany each individual belief system. But for me, like I said earlier, we have, with our 5 daily prayers, the way that they're organized, it goes based on the lunar calendar, right? So that's why Ramadan is 10 days earlier each year, because the lunar calendar is between 29 and 30 days, as opposed to our Gregorian calendar that we use everywhere else in the world, is between 30 and 31 days. So because it's 10 days shorter each year, it starts 10 days earlier. So it's the same sort of thing with prayers, because of the lunar calendar, the prayers they have different times each day. So a couple of minutes off each day. So we start early, like right at the sunrise, like right at the beginning, right when the sun is just starting to rise. It's still pitch dark out, right? But that's the first prayer. And then you have your midday prayer, and then you have your afternoon prayer, and then you have your sunset, and that's when we break fast. So tonight, I don't know, what time is it right now? 7:30, it's 7:37 here. So we break fast today at about 8:16, and it changes every day, so it gets later. So that's the fourth prayer of the day, and then the last prayer is like the evening prayer. Depending on what time of year it is, it's usually about an hour and a half after the sunset prayer. So having those 5 prayers a day is like a ritual, right? Because before each prayer, there's a cleansing that you need to do, right? Just a quick body cleansing, and then you start your prayer, and it's you have your movement, and you're standing, and you're prostrating, and you're saying verses from the Quran, and then you follow up with your dua. And so that in and of itself is a ritual, right? And is grounding. And just for me, like even when I'm prostrating, and it's similar. It's funny when you're analyzing some yoga positions. They are similar to the way that we pray. And at the end of some of my prayers, when I'm prostrating and I'm making my dua and I'm asking God for A, B, C, D, and E, and F, G. I can say the alphabet. I don't know. For me, that ritual right there, it's like I feel like I'm really talking to God, and it's helping me. Especially with the early morning prayer, which is such a hard prayer to get up for. I won't deny it. Especially in the summer when it's at 4 in the morning. Like right now, we're waking up because you're supposed to have breakfast, an early breakfast before you start your fast. So we're waking up right now at around 4:20, and having our breakfast, and then we pray, and then manage to get a couple of hours in before we have to get up for work. But that prayer especially is a very important prayer amongst the 5, because we believe that with that prayer, you're actually communicating with God. Whereas the other 4 prayers, it's like you're praying, but the angels are just taking your message to God. And then, but that 5th prayer, that first prayer of the day, I should say, is a very important one. So that's another ritual. That's one where I just feel so connected. And yeah, I mean, aside from that, you know, sometimes I'll just grab our holy book, the Quran. I'll open it up and see what chapter I end up on and what verse. I'm just like, you know, and it's for me, I'm like, okay, what's the message for me right now? What is he trying to communicate to me right now? What should I work on? What should I improve on? What should I be proud of myself for? So that helps me too.
I love that. Thank you. And I love that you really explain the prayers, because there's similarities to Judaism, because we pray through, well, depending on when during the 7 days it is, whether we're praying 3 or 5 or whatnot. But I love that. And yeah. Okay.
I think in Judaism, there's lots of symbols, and we use symbols in our ritual. So one of the rituals that I really like and is really symbolic is a ritual that we do at the beginning of the new year during Rosh Hashanah called Tashlich. And the idea behind Tashlich is you take you take pieces of bread, and that symbolizes whatever you wish to expunge from your life, whatever sins or whatever grievances that you have, and you can expunge that. And I find the ritual of Tashlich, I've used that around my journey. Being able to, I did it a little bit differently. I threw a stone in a pool. So it wasn't a moving body of water, but it was a sedentary body of water, and being able to throw a stone in, which is another symbol that Jews use, that when we go to the cemetery, maybe it's tradition, we leave a stone by the grave so that if the soul comes back, they can see that there was a visitor. And so by throwing those stones in, it is a recognition of, again, for me, for my losses, and being able to know that the stones will stay there. They'll stay in place, and just having that kind of symbolism and bringing it in with that sense of ritual. And water, there's another Jewish ritual called mikvah, which is a really it's an interesting ritual because it's used monthly by women, and you have to go to mikvah, and it is a intense cleaning ritual, and mikvah preparation starts on the first day of your period, and you have to ensure that you have not bled for 10 consecutive days before you're even allowed to set forth in the mikvah, and you have cleaned yourself underneath your nails everywhere. You have to shave, you have to be clean shaven for mikvah. And the idea behind mikvah is that it coordinates with a theoretical when a woman would ovulate. And so part of what you do after mikvah is that is the first time within that 2-week period that you are allowed to touch your partner, your husband, and they are allowed to touch you. And it is supposed to be sealed by intercourse. So for me, that was more than what I was willing to do, but I really liked the idea of an immersion where I could go into a body of water, immerse myself, that there was specific prayers to say. And now most mikvahs actually have prayers around conception and prayers around pregnancy. So that can be a really powerful ritual, both the prayer piece as well as the ritual piece of the immersion. And that sense of feeling connected, and this sense of femininity, and just what is sort of that power that women have. So that I found too as another kind of ritual. you don't have to go to mikvah necessarily, but just the idea of immersing yourself in a body of water and being able to say some prayers, whether they are formalized prayers, whether they are prayers from your heart, whether they are something you've written down or that you're reading, it's all fine. Another symbolic piece too is candles. So we light a lot of candles in the Jewish faith, and we extinguish candles. And so being able to light lights, that is something else too that I found that was really meaningful and healing too. So those are just some ideas. I mean, the idea of using water, there's so many ways you can use water. The idea of using light, there's so many ways that you can use light. You can use them together. So just being able to also be creative with ritual. Like, I think that's another part that if we're talking about a conversation with God, or a conversation within your faith, is being able to bring part of yourself to it as well, your own creativity, so that it's meaningful to you. Or if it's already liturgy that's fixed and that's meaningful, then choosing that, but making it so that it's meaningful. I think for some people, they get stuck on what can feel for some to be a prescribed nature of faith. Like, it's like, I don't really connect to this. And I think some of the work of faith is figuring out, how do you connect to what seems like it's unconnectable? But also to have the idea that you can create what is connectable for you too.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of faith, is that there's so many opportunities, and clearly, like, okay, this is my high horse. You should only be doing the things that you really feel comfortable and safe doing. Safe being key word. But I'll get off that high horse. But I think that, there's a lot of opportunity within religion, and no matter what your practicing faith is, of finding something that you feel connected to. And I think that that's very important. I've had conversations with people feeling that they were obligated to do all of these things. And then when they did certain things, there was more resentment and more anger, and it didn't feel loving to be doing those things. So how can you do something with so much resentment and anger and still feel connected, like, writing those things? So then it's like, well, how about you just focus on the things that do bring you joy, that do fill you up with love within your practice, so then that way you can kind of dabble in, when you're ready, into those other rituals of things. I don't know, I'm a big advocate of, like, starting where you feel comfortable, pushing what you can, but clearly taking what you know that you can do. And that's, like, the best starting point. Crystal, I wanted to touch on, so you said that you start your day with verses. And so there's a book that I really wanted to make mention. This is called Ruined Womb: From Infertility to Inspiration. And it's by Tiffany Upchurch-Rivera. It's a really beautiful book. And there's a lot of faith in this book. And there's certain, like, prompts in there too, but it's mostly just words that are related to the Christian faith. It's so beautiful. And I've had the chance to hear her speak a few times by this. So so I just wanted to give a little, like, push for this. I don't make anything off of this. I just think it's beautifully done. So just wanted to put that out there. So if you're looking for something to help you with figuring that out, so I do know we have, we're running low on time here, and I want to be mindful of Rima preparing to break fast for this evening. So do any of you have any, like, last minute things that you're like, hey, if this is something that you're interested in, whether it's a book or a resource or something like that, and then when I post everything to YouTube, this video will be posted to my YouTube channel so that the captioning is accessible. And then any resources that we talk about tonight, I'll include in the details for that. So if you have any parting words or anything you want to share, go for it, or not. No pressure.
There's a great website called ritualwell.org. And so that's one that I like to send people to if they're looking for different kinds of rituals. They have infertility specific ones, which is really nice, as well as specific ones for pregnancy loss. So just a shout out to that website.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to apologize. Like I told you guys at the beginning, I can hardly hear you guys, and my husband's getting dinner ready right now, and I'm like, I can't hear what they're saying. But so you're asking for resources, or
Yeah, is there any last, like, is there anything else that you want to share, or any resource that you want people to be sure to know about, as far as like faith and fertility? Maybe something, I haven't been able to find any, but maybe you know, like if there's a Muslim author who's written about infertility?
That's a great question. If there is, I haven't found them either. I haven't really looked, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know.
Marcia Inhorn is a anthropologist who does a lot of work around infertility and the Muslim faith. So
what's their name?
Marcia Inhorn, Inhorn. It's much more academic reading, but that's a place to look at too.
Okay.
That's great. That's awesome.
Okay. Or Rima, we just gave you like your next big project to write a book. Awesome. And Crystal, is there anything that you want to share?
Just, happy to be on, and I don't have any resources at the top of my head, but I could definitely, DM you guys if I think of any.
Okay.
One last thing that I wanted to share too. So again, coming at it from like the research perspective, there's really great literature that shows that if you have a faith connection, that is something that is an asset to you on your fertility journey. That having faith in God, having that faith that, God has a plan and things work out the way that they're supposed to, is something that is really comforting and a strength. And it's a helpful asset, so that even if your family isn't built in the way that you imagined it was going to, being able to have that faith can help shift that perspective so that you can have that acceptance to whatever your family might look like, however you are able to utilize that nurturance capability, that mentoring capability, that teaching capability, all of these things that come out as parents, but are not limited to parents.
Thank you so much. Oh, you guys, I wish we were in person. I could give you each a hug. I am so grateful. I cannot thank you enough, truly. And Rima, I do hope that your meal is very blessed for you and a beautiful one. And I hope that everybody has a beautiful rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Are you planning to save this to your Instagram as well? Or?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then as soon as it's posted, then I'll get it up on YouTube tonight.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thanks so much for having us and organizing this dialogue. It's so important, and I'm just thankful that you asked me to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, you got it, and we'll have future ones too.
Lovely to meet you both, and thanks for having me again, Jessie.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
Night.